It was ugly, but Iowa found a way. They get the win against Michigan State, and there's one reason Iowa has Kaden Wetjen and Michigan State does not.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast coming to you after Iowa gets the win against Michigan State 2017. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years and a lifelong fan as the Hawkeyes find a way. You can hear me on the Iowa Sports Radio Network each weekday from noon to 2 and stations across the state, including Des Moines on KXNO, along with Sioux City, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, and the Quad Cities. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we're going to just take a look back at this one, how Iowa finds a way, what is still left here, as Iowa has one game remaining. Iowa with the senior day win against Michigan State, and Nebraska awaits next week. Of course, a bowl game after that, as we give you a rapid reaction podcast. Well, this was one where Iowa stole it. And in a season where Iowa has had so many of the what-if situations, right? What if you complete a screen pass against Indiana? What if TJ Hall's arm is just a little bit higher against Oregon? What if, a lot of what ifs, Kaden Wetjen wears a size 9 shoe instead of 11 and his foot's in against USC? That has been this. What if Iowa State doesn't have a double deflection for a catch on third down in a tie football game and Iowa would get the ball back in that one? Alas, you are what your record says you are. You're 7-4. And for all of those, this is one where Iowa got away with one. A first half of ineptitude all over the place. An offensive game plan that was hideous. The execution of that awful game plan was even worse. Mark Gronowski was nothing short of terrible throwing the football in the first half, and the offense as a whole couldn't get going. You know, in a game where Iowa had to run the football, came in against one of the worst rush defenses, worst overall defenses, they had to fight and claw and use all 60 minutes just to get 20 points in this game, including 13 in the fourth quarter. And before that fourth quarter, their only points came on a Kaden Wetjen punt return for a touchdown. The Hawkeyes finished the game, total offense 301. Iowa pretty good, 154 on the ground, 147 through the air. And there were some books that had Mark Gronowski's passing yards at, 146.5, and he just slides over that total. I think FanDuel had it at 138 at least when I looked at it on Friday. That aside, Iowa in an ugly football game. In a game where if you lose it, we're having a completely different conversation. It's not burn it all down, but it's pretty darn close. To have that on the heels of those frustrations of the season and how close Iowa's been. You lose to a winless in the Big Ten Michigan State team at home, things would have got ugly. And they got ugly inside of Kinnick Stadium. The Boo Birds were out, as they should have been, because that performance, in many realms, was awful. Now, I understand the defense a couple of times got some bad spots, but the third quarter, that did not look like the Iowa defense we'd certainly grown accustomed to throughout the years. They were bad on that. Drew Stevens had a miss to end the first half as Iowa got an interception. Zach Lutmer made a play. All right, going to get a score out of this one, take that momentum into the locker room, wide left. And that's just been the story of this one. And the season, where it hasn't all quite clicked at the way that you want. Credit to the senior class, though, making plays. And from the defense and guys like Llewellyn and Aaron Graves, who made a big play. They made it 3rd and 1 on one of those final drives of the game. To, obviously, Mark Gronowski coming up clutch. The touchdown grab by Jacob Gill, and certainly the highlight of his Iowa career, comes in that moment in his final game at Kinnick Stadium, making the touchdown and getting Iowa tied 17 apiece. And then Iowa gets the ball back, and they get into field goal range. And Drew Stevens, after missing his first attempt, timeout was called. It was the opposite of what happened in the end of the first half. He walks it off. And for a guy that has had certainly ups and downs in his career. And I think Drew Stevens, you go back to a couple of years ago, doesn't get the opportunity against Nebraska to kick the game winner. And to conclude his career at Kinnick Stadium like that, pretty special moment. A guy that has all the physical traits. It's been more inconsistent, I think, than any of us wanted to see. But that dude making that kick, good moment. And we like those good moments. And we like those things to happen, certainly to the Hawkeyes. As we ponder how it goes, all the credit in the world to Kaden Wetjen to put together that kind of performance. For Kaden Wetjen to do that, over 140 yards rushing, breaking Tim Dwight's punt return record for touchdowns in a career. For a walk-on from Williamsburg. For a guy that comes in from Iowa Western, how's he going to fit? What's he going to do? And to turn into this. Not a guy that was around for 4 years. Not a guy that had opportunities. Not a COVID guy that got 5, 6 years. Just a great story. And that's what Iowa football delivers for us every single year. You can be upset about them not being able to take it to the next level, to go up a tier. You can whine and complain that they're never going to win championships under Kirk Ferentz. Guess what? They're not winning championships over anybody. That's the new reality. The new reality of Iowa football in this structure, unless you got an influx of cash coming from somewhere, you're not competing at that highest level. But what you can do is be a consistent winner. Kirk Ferentz does that. I know the conversation with the loss here, completely different, but they found a way. And it's good every once in a while to steal one. Steal one that you probably shouldn't have got, but they did. And that's where we are. We continue to dive a little bit deeper into this one, a rapid reaction podcast after Iowa gets a win over Michigan State. Stay right there. We got more. Take a look at the defense, some of the stalwarts over there, how Iowa got it done, and Nebraska right around the corner. Talking Iowa football as we roll through. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. College football is wrapping up this season. Still couldn't be more excited for it. The tailgates, the rivalries, energy in the stands. There's nothing like college football. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. You got endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use GameTime. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. You can find your way next week. You want to make your road trip over to Lincoln and Memorial Stadium. They got you covered there with some great tickets on Black Friday as the Hawkeyes take on the Huskers. Maybe it'll be the bowl game wherever Iowa ends up. Could be in Vegas, could be in Tampa, and a whole other host of destinations. That is where you can be to watch the Hawkeyes, and you can get your tickets on GameTime. I love the ability for you to see exactly where you're going to be inside the stadium. And if you're going to a new stadium, maybe you've never been to Nebraska before, you can see what your seat looks like right there on the GameTime app. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download GameTime today. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Iowa with the win 2017 over Michigan State. Inside the numbers here. And for Iowa, Mark Gronowski, after that slow start again, is it like we talked about the first game of the season? Senior day, too amped up, looked like it. Just looked awful in the first half. He settles in, goes 12-22, 147 yards and a touchdown. Also had that interception, one of the worst interceptions maybe of his career. I mean, that was just guessing. You're just absolutely guessing on that interception that was grabbed down at the 5-yard line. Looked like an arm punt. Somebody on Twitter said looked like Tommy Armstrong, former Husker, just chucking one up there. Easy pick. Well, you don't have a punter anymore that can put it inside the 5-yard line. Guess you just do it on first down with a punt and an interception, and that's what happened there. Kamari Moulton, another hard-earned 18 carries, 78 yards. It's what you get you. It's the old Leroy Horde. What was the quote he had? You need You need 2, I'll get you 3. You need 4, I'll get you 3. I mean, that's not Kamari Moulton. He's a different kind of running back, but we just have been waiting for that big moment, that big play, and I thought it was going to come here against this Michigan State rush defense. Have been pretty bad throughout the course of the season. Didn't come again. Gronowski, 11 of 57. Couple of really important runs, though, during the course of this football game. Saw more Jazzion Patterson, 6 carries, 24 yards for him. 2 for 2 yards for Xavier Williams. Had a jet sweep with Wetgen, that one for a yard. And then Terrell Washington. And on that Terrell Washington play, it looked like they were setting up a throwback to the quarterback as they were trying to get it back to Gronowski on that play. It was blown up, and he lost 8 yards on that play as they were trying to set something up on that one. Leading the way in receiving, it was Jacob Gill. We talked about his touchdown, which was absolutely huge for this team tying the football. He had those 4 grabs for 23 yards and a touchdown. 13 of them came on the touchdown grab. 3 catches for 31 yards for DJ Vonamy, who's going to be a factor going forward, and excited about his future. 2 catches for Moulton, 2 catches, 46 yards, 2 big ones out of Reese Vanderzee, and also a big catch out of Sam Phillips. That is the pass catchers in the game. 2 of 3 in field goals for Drew Stevens. We talked about him. How about, though, the punt returns? 3 returns, 147 yards, averaging 49 yards per return for Kaden Wetjen. Why do teams continue to punt the ball to him? And I thought maybe Michigan State has employed the best strategy that we've seen throughout the course of this year. Eckley, their normal punter, was outstanding 4 times outside of the 11-yarder that he chunked out to the right side. But beside that, he had a couple of boomers. The problem, his coverage unit wasn't very good. And Kaden Wetjen is just an absolute stud. Alessio Milovic, not even close. Sorry, Matt Sheehan helped us out on a crossover edition this week. The punts, though, that they used with him, it was brilliant. And you're not going to put Kaden Wetjen back there safety on 4th and 2. So you go that direction. And he was able to pin Iowa deep a couple of different times. Iowa defensively, Carson Shire, what a performance out of him. He was all over the place. Him, Entringer, Lutmer, Wampa, the defensive backfield, along with Shire, tremendous out of those guys. Talked about some of the pressures out of the defensive line. Iowa in this football game, 3rd quarter wasn't good defensively, but outside of that, I mean, that defense was just, they were everywhere. Making the plays, doing what you always anticipate Iowa defense is going to do. I'm bringing up the official numbers here. Want to get those in front of me. Here it is. 10 tackles total for Carson Shire in the game. Also had a sack, 1 of 2 sacks. Him and Herkett had the 2 sacks in the game. 7 tackles for loss, though. 3 of them came from Shire. Tackle for loss for Lutmer, 1 for Wampa, 2 for Herkett, along with that sack. And do they have Hurries in there? Yeah, 2 for Shire. Had 1 out of Entringer. They were credited with 9. How about 3 for Max Llewellyn? 1 apiece for Brian Allen and Jonah Pace. Thought Pace played really well, though he only finished the game with the tackle. Pace was really disruptive in there out of this defense. Add it all up, Iowa gets the win, 2017, somehow, some way, and now it's the Huskers. This is a game that you kind of want to flush, right? You're ready to move on quickly. We'll still talk about it. I'll take another second look at it on Sunday night, and we'll get our second look at things, get ready for the week ahead. And it's a different kind of week with it being Black Friday, quick turnaround. Obviously, Iowa with the less day to prepare. And Iowa, they're home. They're ready to go. Nebraska, what time are they going to get back from Penn State as they play the Nittany Lions on Saturday night? What's that going to look like for them? And just condenses down their schedule a little bit. Did see that there is a line out from FanDuel. Was a little bit surprised. The opening line that I saw here on Saturday evening at Iowa, a 5.5 point favorite on the road at Nebraska. It always comes down to a field goal, right? It always comes down to a kick at the end. At least it feels that way. 5.5, that feels a little hefty there on the Hawkeyes. We'll talk a little bit about more of that game, what it means, and what does a win mean in terms of Iowa's bowl game. We'll talk about that as we react here. It's a Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Mention Iowa, Nebraska, 5.5, the number on the opening line from FanDuel. We will see how that one plays out. We'll see if there's some early money making a pushback like I anticipate and bringing that thing down a little bit closer to 3. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's right, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Trent Condon back with you one final time, wrapping up Iowa's 2017 win over Michigan State. They moved to 7-4 on the season, and it is Nebraska up next. Now, if this game plays out and we see both these teams come in there with similar records, Nebraska, more than a touchdown underdog against Penn State, they fall in that one, then I think it's very simply for Tampa. Now, things could get all screwed up. If Michigan, for the game, goes out and beats Ohio State, they're in the college football playoff at 10-2. I remember one of their 2 losses this season came out of conference against Oklahoma. You don't want to discredit somebody going out there and actually scheduling a difficult game. And it's Michigan. It's not Iowa. It's not Wisconsin. It's not Northwestern or Rutgers with that kind of record. It's Michigan. They're getting in, folks. They're getting in at 10-2. All it takes is for them to beat a team that is a lot better than them. But as we've seen in this game, weird things happen. I don't anticipate it. On the surface, I think they get blown out. But we always have to put that out there. And if that happens, the likelihood is then that the Big Ten will get 4 teams in the college football playoff. Ohio State's a lock. Indiana's a lock. Oregon, close to a lock with the win that they got today against USC. Even if they lose next week, the Ducks would against Washington. I still think they're in good shape. They would be 10-2 in that scenario to get in. And then really the only path that is out there would be just that Michigan at 10-2 with an upset win against Ohio State. They're getting in to the college football playoff. But the likelihood is Ohio State will win. It'll be 3 from the Big Ten, and then the trickle down starts. Where does Michigan go? Iowa, Nebraska, maybe fighting for Tampa. The old Outback Bowl now, what, the ReliaQuest? Is that what it is? I'm sorry, I don't get paid by those advertisers. The game in Tampa, the old Outback Bowl. That's what we're talking about. It's one of Kirk's favorites. He's been there a ton. It's been since 2019, though, that the Hawkeyes have been in that bowl game. And we know Tampa would love to have Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa fans back once again, have traveled incredibly well. However, Nebraska made a bowl game last year. Remember where the Huskers were shipped? To New York. Now, they're just happy to be in any bowl game, and they traveled pretty well and better than most of their Big Ten brethren outside of the East Coast schools to that matchup in the Pinstripe Bowl a year ago. However, a warm destination, a program that before that hadn't been to a bowl game in a decade, yeah, they're starved to make a trip. And Nebraska would travel better than Iowa would. It's also this new environment. You know, and the frustrations of this year, the possibility, the path that was there for Iowa to pull a couple of big upsets and get into the college football playoff, and that obviously will not happen. Plus bowl games in general. Who's playing? Who's sitting out? Are we going to have opt-outs? Are we going to have guys that are not going to be playing in this game? It turns into, it's already a glorified exhibition, but it goes to another level in this different environment. I think a win, Iowa's going to Tampa. A loss, I think it gets a little more tricky. Now, Iowa's been to the Music City Bowl a ton. Las Vegas appears maybe to be a more realistic destination for them. That game is on December 31st. So if that plays out in that fashion, little New Year's in Vegas doesn't sound like a bad trip if you're looking to follow the Hawkeyes for that one. Likelihood they're going to be taking on a team in the Big Ten, possibly like a Washington, because the tie-ins are still available for the legacy Pac-12 schools and the bowl connections that they have. We got a game before that, though, and we'll have it all figured out. Thanks for being with us here today as we get ready for next week and the quick turnaround. Should be a wild, wacky week, and of course, it's going to be a big basketball week. Coming up on Saturday evening, the Iowa women getting ready to watch that as they face off against Miami and try to pick up their second win down in Florida, after the nice win against Baylor in an ugly, ugly basketball game, they got the victory against the Bears. Miami on deck next. Game where Iowa is favored still without Chit Chat Right. Who's going to be the point guard? How is that going to look in the ball handling duties that are going to happen against a pretty athletic Miami team? Something to keep an eye on in that one. Regardless, though, we'll be talking about it next week. We'll break things down. Basketball for the men's side, huge matchup for them against Ole Miss, and really our first barometer to see how good this Iowa basketball team is against Chris Beard and that Ole Miss squad on Tuesday. So we're going to have a lot of basketball. Want to talk a little wrestling too, coming on the heels of last week in the national duels. They got a big win on Friday night against Pittsburgh, shutting out the Panthers in dominating fashion. We'll talk some wrestling. The season comes to a close for the women's soccer team. What a run they had, losing to LSU in the NCAA tournament. Tons of things going on. And of course, it's football. We always remember football here. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast. I am Trent Condon. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes again your first listen every day. Glad to be with you and glad to be on the Locked On Network, now number one for sports podcasts and the number one sports podcast network. We will talk to you again on Monday. Another look back at the win against Michigan State. Dive into the numbers a little bit deeper with the numbers from Pro Football Focus. That all comes your way on your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast, Locked On Hawkeyes. We'll talk to you then. Until then, go Hawks.